Do you think it's appropriate for President Trump to ask China and Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden? George, you really think he was serious about thinking that China's going to investigate the Biden family? I think Senator Rubio said a couple days ago. I think he's getting the press all spun up about this. Remember, this is the president who's been tougher on China than any other president. Jim Jordan lives in a mansion that tells a different story than his public image. Built in 1837, this sprawling estate sits on 8.5 acres in rural Ohio. But behind the walls of this historic home, secrets have been kept for decades. His wife Polly fought a battle in 2005 that they hid from everyone. While Jordan was climbing the political ladder, his family was dealing with something that could have destroyed everything. Today, we're taking you inside the hidden world of America's most controversial congressman. Jim Jordan was born on February 17, 1964 in Troy, Ohio. His parents, John and Shirley, worked harder than most people could imagine. His father spent long 12-hour shifts at a tough General Motors plant, where every day was a race to meet production targets. His mother ran her own house cleaning business, working up to 14 hours a day, scrubbing and cleaning for wealthier families in Dayton. The Jordans lived in a small 2-bedroom house in Champaign County. Jim shared a room with his siblings, and every day taught him that nothing came easy. This working-class life shaped the way he saw the world, and it gave him the grit that would help him stand out both on the wrestling mat and later in politics. At Graham High School, Jim became a legend. His wrestling record was 150 wins in just one loss. He won 4 state titles. From 1979 to 1982, that 99.33% win rate is almost unheard of in wrestling. His school wasn't one of the big city powerhouses either. St. Paris, Ohio, where Graham High stood, didn't have the kind of resources other schools had. But that didn't stop Jim. The one loss he suffered as a freshman haunted him. It drove him to train harder than anyone else. After practice, he kept going for 4 or 5 more hours. He ran stadium steps in the cold Ohio winters. His teammates remember the mat burns, the bleeding hands, and the sheer obsession that made him unstoppable. By the end of high school, he was only the second person in Ohio history to win 4 state wrestling titles. People around him could already see his fierce, competitive streak. His coaches and teammates said his intensity was something you didn't see in other kids. He practiced until his body gave out. His father coached him early on and taught him that hard work could take him anywhere. But Jim took that idea to a whole new level. Before the 1979 state championship, he studied tapes of his rivals every night. At just 15 years old, he was already outthinking and outworking his opponents in ways no one expected from a teenager. When Jim was 13, he met Polly. She was 14. They met through her brothers who wrestled against him. Jim once joked that it was more fun wrestling with Polly than with her brothers. But behind the humor was a real connection. They started dating, and even at that young age they were serious. They stayed together through all the ups and downs of high school, college, and beyond. It was the kind of steady relationship that showed even then how Jim could focus on what mattered to him. In 1982, Jim went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. There he kept winning. His record was 156 wins, 28 losses, and 1 draw. He was a 2-time NCAA champion and was voted the school's most dedicated wrestler 4 years in a row. His 49 wins during the 1985 to 886 season set a record that still hasn't been broken. In 1985, Jim pulled off one of the biggest shocks in college wrestling. He beat John Smith, who would later win 2 Olympic gold medals. Jim's 7-4 victory over Smith at the NC Leadway Finals in Oklahoma City is still talked about today. Smith was battling a shoulder injury, and Jim's nonstop pace wore him down. It was a win that defined Jim's college career. But in 1988 at the Olympic trials in Florida, Smith got his revenge. He beat Jim in the semifinals. The loss ended Jim's Olympic dreams at just 24. It was crushing. Jim had trained so hard for that goal, but it slipped away. That match ended his time as a competitor, but it opened a new door. He became a coach at Ohio State and started to channel his drive into helping others. Even while wrestling at the top level, Jim stayed focused on his studies. He graduated in 1986 with a degree in economics. Balancing school and wrestling wasn't easy. Wrestling took up almost every hour with year-round training, strict diets, and endless conditioning. But Jim managed to succeed in both. Later, he would earn a master's degree in education and a law degree. His time at Wisconsin taught him how to think critically, a skill that would help him in politics. And in the middle of all this, Jim married Polly on August 17, 1985, during his college years. They tied the knot. He had just won his first NCAA title and was getting ready for his final season. Most athletes would avoid big life changes at that point, but not Jim. He knew what he wanted. Polly understood the demands of his sport, and her support helped him through the toughest moments. Their marriage has lasted nearly 40 years, a steady bond through wrestling, coaching, and politics. Jim Jordan started working at Ohio State University in 1987. He was only 23 years old when he became assistant wrestling coach. People saw him as young, eager, and intense. His job wasn't just about training wrestlers. He also helped recruit new talent for the team. The wrestling program was growing fast at that time, but behind the scenes, the athletic department had big problems. There were weak rules and poor oversight that would later turn into a nightmare. Jordan, with little experience in handling these issues, would later claim he didn't know what was going on. But some people doubted that. Jordan worked closely with Dr. Richard Strauss. Strauss was the team's doctor from 1978 to 1998. That means Strauss was there the whole time Jordan coached. From 1987 to 1995, their lockers were right next to each other. They saw each other every day. This made it hard to believe that